May I welcome you to this most important sitting of the budget session. May I request the Honorable Minister to present the budget.
10,000 करोड़ रुपया तो पहले ही इन्होंने इकट्ठा कर लिया, कोयला चीनी का दाम बढ़ा करके लीक हो चुका है, पहले ही लीक हो गया। नहीं, परसों मुर्गी पर तोप छोड़ के खुश है क्या? बहुत खुश है क्या मुर्गी पर तोप छोड़ के?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to present the budget for 93-94. Sir, it is now 20 months since our government took office. 20 eventful months in which we have worked ceaselessly under the leadership of Prime Minister Shri P.V. Narasimha Rao to overcome the very difficult economic situation we inherited. In June 1991, the economy was in the throes of an unprecedented balance of payments crisis. A savage squeeze had been imposed on imports. International confidence had collapsed. Industrial production was falling, and inflation was on the rise. This sense of crisis is now behind us. International confidence has been restored. Agriculture has performed well in the current year, and industrial production is beginning to recover. The growth of the economy, which had declined to 1.2% in 91-92, is expected to be around 4% in 92-93. The economic strategy we have followed, resting on the twin pillars of fiscal discipline and structural reform, has been vindicated by this decisive upturn. Fiscal discipline was necessary because the government had lived too long beyond its means. The rising fiscal deficits of the central government were the root cause of our balance of payments problem, rising prices, and high rates of interest. We have made a good progress by reducing the fiscal deficit from 8.4% of GDP in 1991 to about 5% in the current year. Policies of structural reform aimed at increasing efficiency in resource use and improving our international competitiveness were crucial for providing a lasting solution to the payments crisis. It was necessary to restructure our trade and industrial policies, encourage efficiency through greater domestic competition, allow our producers to have access to imports at reasonable rates of duty, encourage foreign investment and upgradation of Indian technology, and progressively integrate the Indian economy with the world economy. Without these reforms, India would face the certain prospect of entering the 21st century as just about the poorest country in Asia. I am convinced, sir, that the Indian people would never tolerate such an outcome. India's natural and human resources entitle us to think in terms of becoming a major powerhouse of the world economy. Our reforms are inspired precisely by this vision. The policy initiative we have taken do not in any way reduce our commitment to the poor and the disadvantaged in our society. On the contrary, we have taken steps to minimize the burden of adjustment on the poor and working classes. We have proved those professional prophets of gloom who were predicting millions of people becoming unemployed. We have disproved those professional prophets of gloom who were predicting millions of people becoming unemployed as a result of the reform program. When we embarked on this path, we knew that the benefit of our policies would only be seen after 3 to 4 years. Patience is therefore essential. Nevertheless, honorable members can take comfort that the early results are certainly encouraging. Inflation is down and production is beginning to recover. Fears of being swamped by imports as a consequence of liberalization have proved to be grossly exaggerated. Despite the virtual removal of import licensing in 92-93, total imports in 92-93 in US dollar terms are likely to be lower than in 1991. Although the rupee has been floated for most current account transactions, the market exchange rate has remained relatively stable. The investment climate has improved considerably. Corporate capital issues by non-government public limited companies in April-October 92 were 67% higher than in the same period of the previous year. Loans sanctioned by financial institutions in the first 10 months of 92-93 were 49% higher than in the same period of the previous year. Foreign investors are showing active interest in investment in many sectors, including critical infrastructure sectors such as power and petroleum. Since August 1991, the approvals given for foreign investment proposals up to the end of January 93 amount to an equity investment of $2.3 billion. These are, of course, only approvals at this stage, and actual flows will take time to materialize, but they certainly indicate a substantial potential for larger investment flows in the future. Nevertheless, there is no room for complacency. Fiscal imbalances are still large. The efficiency and resource-generating capacity of our public sector enterprises are still very inadequate. Inflationary expectations have not yet been fully purged from the system, and inflationary pressure could easily build up again if fiscal discipline is relaxed. The economy is still vulnerable to external shocks and loss of confidence. The riots and disturbances in December 92 and January 93 have also taken their toll by disrupting domestic production and exports and by casting doubts about the stability of our polity and society and our determination to persevere with the difficult task of economic reform. We can ill afford such doubts. To those who seek to divide our nations on the basis of religion or caste, I would urge, in the language of the famous Urdu poet Iqbal, "Suni padi hui hai muddat se dil ki basti, a ek naya shiwala is desh mein banaye." As Indraji once said, shed hatred, not blood. The priorities for economic policy at this critical stage of our economic restructuring are very clear. First, we must continue with the fiscal correction to ensure that inflationary expectations are effectively curbed. To this end, the fiscal deficit, both at the center and in the states, must be further reduced as a proportion of GDP. Two, the room for fiscal maneuver gained by restraining expenditure over the past 2 years must be used to give a strong fillip to development expenditure in 93-94, especially for programs of poverty alleviation, rural development, and the vital social services such as education and health. Three, the hesitant industrial economy, the hesitant industrial recovery must be converted into a strong revival in 93-94, which can then be followed by a vigorous boom in the last 3 years of the 8th plan. Fourth, we must make further progress with our announced strategy of tax reform, moving to simpler tax system with moderate rates and much greater focus on compliance. 5, we must ensure that our economic strategy gives full support to agriculture, on which the livelihood and well-being of the majority of our people depend, and also to agro-processing industries, which have a tremendous potential for increasing employment and income in rural areas. 6, finally, exports must be made a truly high-priority national endeavor so that we can move as quickly as possible to managing the balance of payments without the need for continued exceptional financing from abroad. As Jawaharlal Nehru emphasized more than 30 years ago, this is the only meaningful route to self-reliance. The expenditure and tax proposals for 93-94, which I will be presenting shortly, have been tailored to meet these very objectives. Sir, adequate availability of credit at reasonable rates of interest will be critical in converting this year's weak industrial recovery into a strong revival next year. One factor behind the inadequacy of credit for the commercial sector is the preemption of a large proportion of banks' resources by the government at below market rates of interest through the statutory liquidity ratio. In 92-93, we began the process of reducing the SLR in order to release a larger volume of resources for commercial lending. Our objective is to reduce the SLR further from an effective average level of about 36% at present to about 25% over the next 3 years. The precise phasing of the reduction will be announced by the Reserve Bank of India, taking into account the emerging aggregate monetary and credit situation. The reduction in inflation achieved thus far justifies a reduction in interest rates. Accordingly, the Reserve Bank of India is separately notifying a reduction in the maximum interest rate on bank deposits from 12 to 11%. Simultaneously, the minimum lending rate of 18% on commercial advances is being lowered to 17%. It is my expectation that the lowering of interest rates will help the economic recovery in the coming year. As inflation abates, there will be scope for further reduction in interest rates. Sir, no economic strategy can succeed in our country which does not recognize the central role of agriculture in supporting broad-based and equitable development. Our government is firmly committed to ensuring that agriculture, agro-processing, and rural development are given top priority in the design of economic policy. A major instrument for encouraging agricultural production and making it profitable is the assurance of remunerative prices to the farmers. Procurement prices for the last Kharif crop and the forthcoming Rabi have been handsomely raised to ensure that farmers are compensated for increases in the cost of inputs. It is also the policy of the government not to place administrative restrictions on movement of agricultural products within the country. Our farmers must have the full benefit of prices available in the domestic market. Agricultural credit is another critical input for agriculture and more broadly rural development. The flow of rural credit from institutional sources is expected to jump from rupees 13,800 crores during 92-93 to 16,500 crore during 93-94, an increase of 20%. NABARD's investment refinance supports to bank will increase by 22% from rupees 2,300 crores in the current year to rupees 2,800 crores in 93-94. Within this total, NABARD has evolved an innovative package of measures to ensure special attention to key priority areas. Term loans for minor irrigation will support the sinking of 3.75 lakh wells and installation of 6 lakh pump sets. The rate of NABARD refinance of bank loans is being increased to 90% in the case of northeastern states, and also of investment in 100% export-oriented units in agriculture and allied activities. NABARD will also take up pilot projects for intensive development of rural industries in 5 selected districts with an outlay of rupees 125 crores. NABARD is setting up a venture capital fund with an initial corpus of rupees 5 crores to assist new and innovative investments in farm and non-farm sectors, and a cooperative development fund with an initial corpus of rupees 10 crores to help improve management system and skills in the cooperative banks. In 93-94, sir, we shall pay special attention to revitalizing the agricultural credit system, which has suffered so much in the wake of the so-called loan waiver scheme, so that it becomes a more effective instrument for increasing capital formation and productivity in our agriculture. Sir, our strategy of gradually reducing the high levels of protection to Indian industry and integrating our economy with the world economy will clearly help Indian agriculture. It will moderate the high industrial prices which our farmer has to pay. It will also ensure a more competitive exchange rate at which our agricultural and agro-based exports will be much more profitable. I venture to suggest to honorable members that in the medium term, these changes will be far more significant in favoring agricultural producers than any program of special subsidies could ever be. Sir, in my budget speech last year, I had indicated that the government intended to implement the recommendations of the Narsimham Committee on Financial Sector Reform in stages. The securities scam, which was discovered in April '92, has revealed certain weaknesses which add urgency to the need for financial sector reform. A major reform initiated last year was the introduction of new norms for income recognition and provisioning for bad debts, and the prescription of new capital adequacy requirements in line with internationally accepted Basel Committee norms. The new norms will ensure that the books of our banks will reflect their financial position more accurately and in accordance with internationally accepted accounting practices. These changes will improve our ability to evaluate the performance of the banks and will also make for more effective bank supervision in the future. Because of the new norms, however, banks will have to make large provisions amounting to over 10,000 crores for bad and doubtful advances in their past portfolios. As the provisioning norms are being introduced in two stages, the first impact will be felt in the year ending 31st March 1993, with a further impact next year. The resulting losses will eat into the capital of the banks, which is already inadequate given the new capital adequacy norms. In order to protect the viability and financial health of the Indian banking system, I am therefore making a provision for large capital contribution of rupees 5,700 crore to the nationalized banks in 93-94 to meet the gap created by the application of the first stage of the provisioning norm. There will be no immediate net outgo from the budget, however, as the government's contribution is in the form of government bonds. But the interest payment on these bonds and their ultimate redemption will be a real burden on the budget in future. This is the price we have to pay for having long tolerated management practices in the banks and types of lending which paid inadequate attention to the quality of portfolio and recoveries. I may add that while undertaking such a large injection of capital into the banks, specific commitments will be required from each bank to ensure that their future management practices ensure a high level of portfolio quality so that the earlier problem does not recur. Even this large injection of capital will only solve the immediate problem. Additional losses will arise because of the second stage of provisioning next year. Besides, the capital adequacy requirements are also being introduced in a phased manner, and there will be additional capital needs on this account in 94-95 and 95-96. This burden cannot be borne entirely by the budget without eating into scarce resources which are desperately needed for development, especially in the rural areas. Government has therefore decided that the State Bank of India, as well as other nationalized banks which are in a position to do so, will be allowed to access the capital market to raise fresh equity to meet their shortfall in capital requirements over the next 3 years. The additional capital thus mobilized will help our banks to expand their lending, which would otherwise be constrained by capital inadequacy. Government will continue to retain majority ownership and therefore effective control in the public sector banks. Necessary legislation to give effect to this decision will be introduced later in the year. If banks are to make provisions for bad debts, they must also be able to realize the security on their bad debts. At present, the legal process for realizing bank dues is tortuous, and cases take several years in the courts. Government has therefore decided to set up special tribunals to expedite legal action by the banks to enforce recoveries. Legislation to this effect will be introduced in the course of the year. The securities scam has also revealed weaknesses in the existing system of supervision of banks. Following the recommendations of the Narsimham Committee, the Reserve Bank of India has decided to strengthen its supervisory arrangements by setting up a separate board for financial supervision within the Reserve Bank. Parallel with reforms in the banking system, sir, we are vigorously pursuing reforms in the capital markets. We must ensure that trading and settlement take place with speed and transparency under appropriate rules and regulations designed to ensure adequate protection for investors. The Securities and Exchange Board of India, which was given statutory status and powers nearly 12 months ago, has been entrusted with the task of bringing about this transition. As promised in my last budget speech, the Office of the Controller of Capital Issues in the Ministry of Finance has been abolished, and almost all powers under the Securities Contract Regulation Act have been delegated or transferred to SEBI. Several important steps have been taken in the current year to reform the capital market. Rules and regulations have been notified to deal with insider trading, the operations of mutual funds, the registration of brokers, merchant bankers, and other intermediaries. The scheme for allowing foreign institutional investors to invest in the capital markets, announced in my last budget speech, has been implemented and a number of approvals given. Several private sector mutual funds have recently been given clearance by SEBI. A company has been incorporated for the establishment of a national stock exchange, which is expected to operate as a model stock exchange with member brokers all over the country, trading in the exchange through modern telecommunication facilities. Proposals are also being considered for the establishment of a centralized depository with a national clearance and settlement system. We are determined, sir, to ensure that further reforms of the capital market are implemented in the course of 93-94 so that the capital market can mobilize adequate funds for investment. On the basis of experience gained, the government has decided to amend the Securities and Exchange Board of India Act to give SEBI additional powers in order to increase its effectiveness. With reforms underway in the banking system and in the capital market, it is necessary to address the need for similar reforms in the insurance industry aimed at introducing a more competitive environment and work culture subject to suitable regulation and supervision. I propose to appoint a high-powered committee to go into these issues in depth and submit its recommendations within 6 months. Sir, in my budget speech last year, I had announced the introduction of a new system of exchange rate management under which a dual exchange rate regime was introduced, and import licensing was eliminated on most items of capital goods, raw materials, intermediates, and components. These items became freely importable against foreign exchange purchased in the market. The system has worked fairly well, and the market exchange rate has been remarkably stable. The existence of a dual rate, however, hurts exporters and other foreign exchange earners who have to surrender 40% of their earnings at the official rate, getting the benefit of the higher market rate on only 60%. Many exporters have said that this amounts to a tax on exporters of goods and services whose continuation cannot be justified at a time when exports must receive our topmost support. There is merit in this point of view, and the experience of the past year gives ground for confidence that we can unify the exchange rate and still manage the balance of payments with a reasonable degree of stability in the exchange rate. The government has therefore decided to eliminate the dual rates arrangement. All exporters, as well as other foreign exchange earners, such as our workers abroad, will henceforth be allowed to convert 100% of their earnings at the market rate. All imports will also henceforth have to be paid for at the market rate. The details of the new system are being notified separately by the Reserve Bank of India. I expect that this measure will give a major boost to our exports and will further encourage foreign exchange flows into official channels. Indian workers working abroad, particularly from states like Kerala, have made an immense contribution to the strengthening of our balance of payments. The elimination of the dual rate signifies our deep appreciation for their magnificent contribution. Several other steps are also being taken to stimulate exports. The Commerce Ministry is reviewing the list of items whose exports are subject to one or other restriction with a view to removing as many restrictions as possible. The Reserve Bank of India is taking steps to ensure that adequate credit will be available for exports. Banks have already been asked to ensure that export credit must amount to at least 10% of their total advances. The interest rate on rupee export credit is being reduced by 1 percentage point. As a further measure of support for our exports, the interest tax will be waived in the case of export credit from banks. This will permit some additional reduction in the rates of interest on export credit. I will have more to say on incentives for exports when I come to my text proposals in the later part of my speech. A new policy towards foreign investment has been an integral part of our strategy of modernizing the economy and establishing global linkages which will be of critical importance in the emerging world economy. I have already mentioned that the initiative taken in this area thus far have yielded encouraging results. I have no doubt that as our reform proceeds and gains momentum, we can expect to attract a substantial share of private investment that is presently flowing to many developing countries in Asia, including China and Vietnam. The government has signed the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency Convention, and we expect to join MIGA formally as soon as membership procedures are completed. Several countries, including the United Kingdom, Germany, and the United States, have expressed an interest in signing bilateral investment treaties with us. The government has indicated a willingness to enter into bilateral negotiations on this issue. Sir, industrial modernization, and especially the creation of internationally competitive industries, requires a massive expansion of and qualitative improvement in our infrastructure. This is especially true of power generation, telecommunication, and roads. Traditionally, these areas have been the preserve of the public sector. Substantial expansion of public investment in these areas is certainly necessary. However, the needs of the country are far beyond the capacity of the public sector to fully deliver in a reasonable time frame. The government has therefore adopted a policy of encouraging private sector involvement and participation in these areas to supplement the efforts being made by the public sector. In order to attract such investment, it will be necessary to make changes in policies, procedures, and the regulatory framework in these sectors. The government proposes to make such changes as the need arises. Over the past 2 years, we have taken several steps to remove unnecessary bureaucratic interference in economic activity in order to create an environment in which the energies of our people can be harnessed to maximize innovation, production, and growth. However, I am constantly told that despite liberalization at the policy level, our procedures in many areas remain archaic and cumbersome. Many of our laws also need thorough review to bring them in line with the emerging economic environment. The government has therefore decided that a special review group will be constituted in each ministry to make a review of existing laws and procedures to identify changes needed in the light of new policies. I hope the state governments, which have a crucial role to play in promoting development and investment in the new environment, will also take similar steps at their end. Sir, let me now turn to the revised estimates for 92-93. We have tried to maintain strict control over expenditure, but certain increases over the budget estimates were unavoidable. An additional provision of Rs 1,500 crore has to be made for food, fertilizer, and export subsidies. The additional requirement of food subsidy is because of the delay in increasing issue prices to absorb the impact of higher procurement prices. The higher provision for export subsidies is big because of settlement of claims in the pipeline for cash compensatory support and continuance of benefits for deemed exports. In respect of fertilizer, the increase is due to reduction in prices of urea and higher input costs. In addition, I have provided Rs 340 crores as one-time assistance to farmers for purchase of fertilizers whose prices were decontrolled. The Ministry of Home Affairs has to be provided additional funds for meeting security-related expenditure in the wake of disturbed conditions in certain part of our country. While an assessment of the actual requirement is being made, I have for the present included in the revised estimate an additional provision of Rs 285 crore. If a further provision becomes inescapable, we shall come to the House for the necessary supplementary grant. These and other increases have been offset by a reduction of Rs 1,300 crore in the requirement for loans to states against small saving collection. The decline in small saving collection has been a matter of concern, and government has taken measures to improve the rate of return to investors. As a consequence, the collections now have shown an uptrend in recent months. As a result of all these developments, total non-plan expenditure is higher by Rs 3,278 crore as compared with the budget estimate. On the plan side, there is an increase in budgetary support for the central plan for certain important sectors. An additional provision of Rs 630 30 crore is being made for the National Renewal Fund, which is a key element in our strategy for economic reform. Similarly, an additional provision of rupees 250 crore has been made for strengthening schemes in the social sectors such as health and family welfare. The provision for rural development is being augmented by rupees 500 crores. Central assistance to state and union territory plans is being augmented by rupees 1,228 crore, mainly for externally aided projects where the pace of implementation justifies an allocation larger than in the budget estimate. Taking plan and non-plan expenditure together, the total provision in the revised estimate is rupees 1,24,726 crores against rupees 1,19,087 crores in the budget estimates. Against these additional expenditure, revenue receipts have also been higher because of better tax collections and higher royalty on offshore crude oil. Capital receipts under market loans and small saving receipts are lower than in the budget estimate, but this is offset by higher receipts from 364 days treasury bills, which is a new instrument designed to develop a market for government securities. The total receipts in the revised estimate are rupees 1,17,524 crores compared to rupees 1,13,696 crore in the budget estimate. The budget deficit is estimated at rupees 7,202 crores, and the fiscal deficit for the year is now placed at rupees 36,722 crores. These figures are somewhat higher than envisaged in the budget estimate, but they are within the tolerable limits for macroeconomic stability. Sir, I now turn to the budget estimates for 93-94. The resource constraint facing us last year imposed a tight leash on the development programs we could finance in 92-93. The total size of the central plan in 92-93 was only 12.6% higher than in the previous years. With the improvement in the fiscal situation achieved in the course of 92-93 and the moderation in inflation, we are now in a position to give a boost to the development plan while ensuring continued improvement in the fiscal deficit. Accordingly, the central plan outlay for 93-94 has been fixed at rupees 63,936 crores, which is almost 32% higher than the figure of rupees 48,407 crores in 92-93. The central plan will be financed to the extent of rupees 23,241 crores from the budget support, which is almost 26% higher than the budget support of rupees 18,501 crores in 92-93. The balance of the central plan outlay of rupees 40,695 crores will be met from internal and extra budgetary resources compared with rupees 29,906 crores in 92-93, representing a step up of 36%. I am providing rupees 18,010 crores for central assistance for states and union territory plans in 93-94 compared to rupees 16,111 crores in 92-93. The total budgetary support from the central government budget to the central and state plans increases by almost 19% from the rupees 34,612 crores in 92-93 to rupees 41,251 crores in 93-94. The large increase in budget support for the plan has enabled a substantial step up in central plan programs in the vital social sectors and rural development, which depend upon budgetary resources. The outlay for the Department of Rural Development next year has been enhanced by a massive 62% to rupees 5,010 crores. Both employment generation and capital formation in rural areas will receive a major boost as a result. The allocation for the Jawar Rozgar Yojana is being increased to rupees 3,306 crore compared with the current year's level of rupees 2,046 crore. This is aimed at creating 11,000 million man-days of employment. It is proposed to train 3.5 lakh young persons in rural areas under the training of Rural Youth for Self-Employment Program. For the Rural Water Supply Program, The provision has been increased substantially from rupees 460 crores in 92-93 to rupees 740 crores next year. Higher allocations have also been provided for the Integrated Rural Development Program. The programs of decentralized planning and development will receive a massive stimulus as a result of the strengthening of Panchayati Raj institutions as envisaged in the Constitution 72nd Amendment Bill. We are firm in our resolve to realize the dream of the late Shri Rajiv Gandhi to make Panchayati Raj institutions as a vibrant instrument for promoting participatory development and social justice. Sir, the development of human resources is given high priority in the 8th plan. Honorable members are also aware that education is an area which is also very close to my own heart. I am therefore particularly happy to announce that the outlay for education is being increased from rupees 952 crores to rupees 1310 crores, which is a step up of 37.6%. Universal provision of primary education and adult literacy of satisfactory quality, particularly for girls, is a prerequisite for the modernization of our economy and our society. I am happy to inform honorable members that our total literacy campaigns are breaking new grounds and are now being implemented in 182 districts, covering approximately 430 lakhs adult learners. A new scheme is being launched for the improvement of primary education in educationally backward districts and in districts where the total literacy campaigns have been successful, leading to an enhanced demand for primary education. In these districts, district-specific and population-specific plans for achieving universalization of elementary education are being prepared. 20 to 25 districts out of about 200 educationally backward districts where female literacy is below national average will be taken up for preparation of district plans in 93-94. In the sphere of higher and technical education, modernization and upgradation would receive high priority. Keeping in view the aspiration of the northeastern region, the government has decided to set up a university in Nagaland and an Indian Institute of Technology in Assam. For health, the provision is rupees 483 crores, which is 60% higher than the level of rupees 302 crores in the current year's budget. A major part of the provision will be for national programs for control of communicable and other diseases. The family welfare program is of overriding national importance. The provision under this head is being stepped up from rupees 1,000 crores for the current year to rupees 1,270 crores for the next year. A program to improve the quality of family planning services in Uttar Pradesh is being launched at the cost of US dollars 325 million with assistance from USA. In addition, with the aim of reducing maternal mortality under the social safety net scheme, assistance will be provided for improvement of infrastructure at primary health centers in 90 demographically backward districts of our country. The National Commission for Women, set up last year, is looking into various important issues relating to women. For the integrated child development services, the provision is 474 crores compared to rupees 360 crores in the current year. This will enable us to strengthen considerably the infrastructure setup of this vital scheme. The provision for the Ministry of Welfare has been increased from rupees 530 crores to rupees 630 crores. This includes rupees 73 crores for the liberation and rehabilitation of Safai Karamcharis. A provision of rupees 247 crores has been made for special central assistance for scheduled caste component plan. The operations of the National Scheduled Caste Finance and Development Corporation and the National Backward Classes Finance and Development Corporation will be further expanded. The government regards agriculture as a sector of prime importance for the national economy. The budgetary allocation for the planned schemes of the Ministry of Agriculture, including animal husbandry and dairying, is therefore being increased by 36% from rupees 1,408 crores to rupees 1,918 crores. In addition, the bulk of the outlay on agriculture is in the state plans. The requirements of the infrastructure sectors such as petroleum and natural gas, power, telecommunication, railways and transport have also not been neglected. Investment programs in these sectors are implemented through public enterprises or departmentally run commercial undertakings, and these organizations are expected to finance their plan outlay through their internal and extra budgetary resources. The plan outlay for petroleum and natural gas has been nearly doubled to rupees 12,114 crores from the current year's level of rupees 6,208 crores. The outlay for power has been increased by 22% from rupees 5,167 crore in the current year to rupees 6,269 crores. The outlay for roads has been stepped up from rupees 464 crores to rupees 593 crores. The outlay for chemicals and petrochemicals has also been stepped up from rupees 763 crores to rupees 1,206 crores. The plan outlay for the railways has been increased from rupees 5,700 crores to rupees 6,900 crores, including rupees 400 crores for the Konkan Railway Construction Corporation Limited. Turning to non-plan expenditure, sir, I would like to draw the attention of the House to the tremendous burden of interest payments. The provision for 93-94 on this account is 38,000 crores compared with 32,500 crores in the current year. The high interest burden is due to the rising volume of government debt, which itself reflects the large fiscal deficits of the past incurred year after year. However, with the contemplated reduction in the fiscal deficit and hence in the government's borrowings, the growth of this item is expected to decelerate sharply by 95-96. For defense expenditure, the provision has been increased from rupees 17,500 crores in the current year to rupees 19,180 crores next year. The requirements on account of fertilizer and export subsidies will be significantly lower, reflecting the impact of the measures already taken to rationalize these subsidies. The expenditure on the farm loan waiver scheme will be rupees 500 crores. With this, the government's commitment for payments under the scheme, which started in 1991, will be fully met. I am providing rupees 3,000 crores for food subsidy as against rupees 2,800 crores in the current year. It will be our endeavor to keep the burden of food subsidy at a reasonable level and to ensure at the same time that the vulnerable sections of society are fully protected. Excluding the expenditure on interest, the provision for other non-plan expenditure in 93-94 is about rupees 3,180 crores lower than the revised estimates for the current year. As in previous years, no separate provision is being made for additional dearness allowance, which may become payable next year. The additional expenditure on this account will have to be absorbed by all ministries within the approved budget provision. Coming to receipt, gross tax revenues at the existing level of taxation are estimated at rupees 89,389 crores compared to 78,782 crores in the current year. State's share of taxes next year is estimated at rupees 22,590 crores as against rupees 20,525 crores in the current year's revised estimates. I am taking credit of rupees 3,700 crores for market borrowings as against the current year's level of rupees 3,670 crores. External assistance, net of repayments, is estimated at rupees 6,819 crores as against rupees 5,370 crores in 74 crores in the current year. Net small saving collections next year are estimated to reach the current year's level of rupees 5,500 crores despite heavy maturities falling due next year. As in the current year's revised estimates, I am taking credit of rupees 3,500 crores for receipts from disinvestment of equity in public enterprises. Total receipts at the existing level of taxation are estimated at rupees 1,30,990 crores and total expenditure at rupees 1,31,323 crores, leaving a gap of rupees 333 crores. I now turn to the tax proposal for 93-94. Sir, in framing these proposals, I have been acutely conscious of the conflicting requirements of comprehensive reform of the tax structure on the one hand and the need to protect revenues to finance the large increase in the development plan on the other. Last year, significant reforms were made in personal income taxation based on the recommendations of the Chalia Committee. Reform of corporate taxation was deferred until the detailed recommendations of the Chalia Committee were received. These have since been received. The committee has also recently submitted its final report on indirect taxes, recommending significant reduction in customs duties as well as rationalization and simplification of excise duties. I accept the broad thrust of the Chalia Committee's recommendation on both direct and indirect taxes. We must move as rapidly as possible to a regime of moderate tax rates in direct taxation, which will encourage better compliance, especially if supplemented by efforts at broadening of the tax base. We must also move to a regime of low to moderate custom duties, which is essential for efficient and competitive industrialization of India. Our excise duties should also be simplified with fewer rates, and our long-term aim should be to move to a value-added tax system, as is the case in most countries. However, a nationwide value-added tax system cannot be introduced overnight. There has to be a broad agreement among the center and the states on the designs of such a system. In order to promote informed discussion and debate, I am requesting the National Institute of Public Finance and Policies to prepare the design of a possible value-added tax system. Although all the major recommendations of the Chalia Committee are important, they cannot be implemented immediately for the simple reason that tax reform, which typically involves lower tax rates collected on a broader base, often involves a loss of revenue in the short term. Fiscal experts tell me that the loss of revenue will be made up in the medium term, but there is no guarantee that this will happen immediately, and finance ministers have to look after the short term if they want to survive in the medium term. I therefore hope the House will agree with me that a phased transition is needed. A key issue in phasing the transition is whether to do a little on all fronts or to make decisive changes in certain areas, with a clear declaration of progress to be made in other areas in future. I have thought over this matter carefully, and I feel that decisive action in critical areas is more important than marginal improvements on all fronts. The most critical area for action at present is customs duties. Despite the adjustment in customs duties in the last two budgets, our duties are still much higher than in most of our competitor countries, especially on capital goods. With these duties and the resulting high capital cost, our producers will never be able to compete in world markets. Nor can we expect new investment, both domestic and foreign, to flow into areas with export markets in view if high customs duties make them uncompetitive. Yet it is such investments that we need most at present if we want to reduce our dependence on external assistance. We cannot and must not continue with the approach of setting up industries aimed solely at the domestic market in the belief that replacing import ipso facto contributes to self-reliance, without considering at what cost we are affecting this replacement. In fact, replacement at unduly high cost contributes to inefficient industrialization, an inability to expand employment, an inability to export, and a permanent dependence on external assistance. We must take, therefore, a bold initiative in this area while taking due care to protect the legitimate concerns of our own industry. Normally, the revenue loss from customs duty reduction could have been made up through higher excise duties. However, there are compelling reasons for rationalizing and reducing excise duties over a wide range of industry, because many of our duties are far too high and parts of industry are also suffering from recessionary conditions. In these circumstances, honorable members will appreciate that I have rather a limited room for maneuver in the area of direct taxes. Major reform of the corporate tax structure along the lines recommended by the Chalia Committee is undoubtedly desired. However, for the reason indicated, it will have to be postponed to the next year.